We built this city on rock and roll. Built this city. We built this city on rock and roll. But my girl wants to party all the time, party all the time, party all the time. Get him.
Hello there, my name is Aaron Moss, and this is the Starman Manhunter Adventure Hour, presented by Head Speaks. This is an hour-ish long podcast where we'll talk about the Will Payton Starman comic and the Mark Shaw Manhunter comic from the late 80s, early 90s. We'll talk about every appearance of these two great characters. If you've never read them or haven't read them in a while, this may be a good time to explore these issues. Now, let's get started with our first comic.
Welcome, Star Hunters, to episode 36 of the Starman Adventure Hour. As usual, I am your host, Aaron Brotherhead Moss, and today we're looking at the book that was released in May of 1991. Once again, this month we're only looking at one book. In fact, that's what it normally is at this point. We're looking at Starman number 36. This cover dated was July of 1991. The on-sale date was May the 28th of 1991. The cover price, $1. Title of this was called Intruder Alert. Writer, Len Straczynski. Penciler, our buddy Dave Hoover. Inker, Scott Hanna. Letterer, the always dependable Robert M. Piana. Colorist, Tom J. McCraw. The cover credits, once again, was Dave Hoover. The editor on this was Katie Main. And sadly, this wasn't reprinted anywhere, so this is all we got. As normal, we're going to look at the cover first. The cover of this, we've got Starman in the background, chained to a giant cross, in quotes, type aperture. Not quite a cross, but a T formation, I guess. His arms out to his, are hanging out, straight out. His legs are spread akimbo. I believe that's the right word. He's looking a little upset. In front of him, we have Rampage and the beautiful and always deadly Phantom Lady. Phantom Lady's firing her wrist gauntlet at somebody, firing at us, the audience. Both ladies are standing in front of Will, looking extremely pissed off. Great cover. Dave Hoover did a fantastic job on this cover. We see the anger in both the ladies' face, and Starman, let's not forget him in the back. There's some wood around the Starman logo, like a wall's being blown apart, and we're looking inside a building where Starman's being held captive. And apparently these two ladies are here to free him. So let's find out how that happens. So we start out the story with a bogey, someone shooting a missile at Starman, and Starman flying along, and he's saying there's no finer way to relax than a quick supersonic jaunt. He talks about how he can't believe anyone would be dumb enough to think he couldn't dodge an ordinary missile. And then he's like, whoa, these aren't ordinary missiles. And he thinks to himself, somehow they've locked onto me and they change the direction as fast as I can. So he just uses his heat blast, tries to fry the guidance system, and he finds out they're laser targeted and they come at him. The fourth page of this is three little inserts, I guess. Someone looking at him through a scope of some sort saying, we've nailed him. And it says, ba-boom. And Starman looks got a kind of a scared look on his face. And then we find out that he's actually doing some testing for the military. His uniform's all covered in purple goo. I see where Len was going with this, but I don't know if I like the way it was written. Because again, you're not knowing what's going on, coming to the story cold. You may think someone's trying to shoot at Will, and that's what they want you to look at. Someone's attacking him. But for it to turn around and just be a fake out, and he was actually testing this guidance missile, or testing these missiles for the military, in my opinion, these thoughts how he had, they've locked onto me. They changed as fast as I can. I better fry their guidance system. Oh no, they're laser targeted. And the look of almost like fear or panic on his face when he gets hit. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just me, but it seems a little wonky the way it's written. Like they're trying to fake you out at the beginning, make you think someone's attacking them, and oh no, it's just the government using him for testing missiles. I don't know. I don't, it's not horrible, but to me, this beginning part of the story, no offense to Len Straczynski, but I think it could have been written a little better. Something I don't quite know offhand, but I don't know. I usually have high praise for Starman. This beginning part of the story, though, is not great, in my opinion. But this is all just set up. Again, the general says that the military, the government's willing to throw some money towards his donation or his fundraising, the Star Foundation. And I do like that they're still keeping the Star Foundation in effect. They're still mentioning it. It's not, gone the way of the dodo. The story's done, so let's forget about it. They keep mentioning it. So I like the continuity there, that they keep mentioning that story. And I like that Will, being who Will is, he's not quite sure if he should be accepting money from defense contractors for doing superhero favors, because again, that's not really what he wants. He wants to be, he's a hero. He wants to be legitimate. He wants to be in the up and up, and doing favors for the government and then them paying him, not necessarily even the government, the defense contractors, and them giving him money for his charity. While it's a good thing, it can have some bad connotations, or it can have some bad, not necessarily publicity, but I don't know. Will's got kind of the same thoughts that I do that may look a little fishy. So something that Will has to wrestle with is, can he accept this money? I mean, he was going to help out anyways, whether they gave him money or not, because that's who Will is. He likes to help the government out. He's a hero. He likes to do the right thing. But now that they're saying, well, we'll give you some money for your charity for helping us, it just makes him feel, I guess, dirty, in quotes. It doesn't feel quite right for him to take the money. But again, his charity can use the money because it's doing a good thing. So I see where Will's coming from. So again, while I dislike the way the story starts and the fake out they're pulling here at the beginning of the story, I do like, again, the Star Foundation being brought back or mentioned again. And Will's whole attitude about it, like, I don't know if I should. It's not a bad thing, but it could be a bad thing. So I do like that. It's very in character for Will. And the next thing we're at the Star Labs facility that Kitty Faulkner works at here in the Southwest. And apparently Kitty's got a way to clean a suit for him. And again, I like their interplay here between the two of them. And so Kitty's cleaning his costume, and she's like, so how about trading a favor for a favor? He's like, oh man, not another favor today. And she throws his costume at him. Fine, here's your coming leotard. And he said, hey, lighten up. I was joking. After what you've done, how can I refuse? And I don't know. Again, I'm going back to, I don't know if I like the way that's written. Kitty seems to be awfully offended when Will is apparently making a joke. Maybe Will's just a really good actor and it didn't seem that way to her, but I don't know. It just comes across as, it just doesn't come across as legitimate. It comes across as, it's really hard for me to pin down. I can't quite say what it is, but yeah, it comes across like she's actually upset with him, even though obviously he's joking. So I don't know. Maybe just me. But yeah, I do like the scene, between Kitty and Will. Again, kind of here on page 7, kind of a throwback to let you know when the story took place. In her hand, she's got some, I think those are 3.5 floppy disks. So let you know where, for the kids out there that maybe listen, I know there's no kids listening to this, but that's the save icon that you click on. That's from a disk. That's how we used to store information. In fact, by this point, before this was a 5 1/4 bigger floppy. That's when I got into it, but that's, again, decades ago. So again, Kitty invites him to be an experiment or join an experiment with a friend, a former professor of hers who has a private lab near Lake Tahoe, and he needs some assistance. And I like the way that they're talking here, that again, I will say this right now. I do like Kitty. I like Kitty, but I like Will better with Carol. But then again, at this point, he's Starman, and I do like Starman with Kitty, because again, she knows who he is. She doesn't know who Starman really is, but she knows Starman, and I think they make a cute couple, though I think Kitty, to me, comes across as a little older than him. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but again, I've always imagined Kitty a little older, but... And again, I know I'm a male chauvinist pig, that there's nothing wrong with an older guy dating a younger woman, but reverse it and, clutching my pearls and all that. Even I'm not clutching pearls, but I don't know, I like it, but I like Will and Carol better, which can happen if he's with Kitty. So But anyways, I'm getting off track. As Kitty's asking for this fare, the way she asks, she's like, what are you doing this weekend? He's like, are you asking me on a date? You could call it that, but more of an experiment. And Will's like, it figures. I think I like the date idea better. She's like, do you? It doesn't have to be all work. So again, good. I've been working enough lately. What's the deal? And that's what tells about the friend that's got an experiment he's working on, and he needs a safe, compact power source. And I do like here where he's like, so what you're saying, you see me as just another power source? As he lights up. And I love this here on the top of page 9 where he lights up and he's flaming almost with just the energy coming off of him. And she's like, well, yes. Okay, I can accept that. So it looks like he's getting kind of mad. Oh, you want me for a power source? Yeah. Okay, I'm fine with that. Let's go for it. So I do like this. It shows very much human side of Starman. And it just, again, I have some problems with the earlier writing, but I do like what Len's doing here. So for the most part, and she's like, as he says that, she's like, haha, my goodness, when did you develop a sense of humor? And he's like, just recently. Came back with my sense of smell. And she says, she likes it. Levity looks good on him. Because again, Will is a very, I don't want to say mopey character, but he is always worrying about doing the right thing. He's worried he may be doing something wrong, and he doesn't want that to happen. So I do like Will. I do like his sense of morality, the sense that he knows he's a hero and that he needs to do the right thing. But sometimes, he does let it get to him a little bit too much. And that's what Kitty's here. I like when, you're joking around. I like that. And again, she said they'll leave around 4 and she'll book the flights. He's like, don't worry. We'll go air Starman. So again, Starman's going to use his powers to fly him out there apparently. And then we cut to Friday morning where Will's telling his mom that he's off to Lake Tahoe for the weekend. And his mom's like, on superhero business? And his sister Jane's like, more like monkey business. He's like, I promised to help Kitty with some sort of experiment in Lake Tahoe for the weekend. He's like, I've got to get my own place very soon. And his mom and sister just laugh. And again, I like the family dynamics here. It's Will, his mom, and his sister. And again, they've got a very good family relationship. They're joking around with one another. They've got no problem joking around. And I just like the way that it's been done here. It's very nice. And it shows that family, the familiar instincts they have, or not instincts, but the bonds that they have. And again, like any good family, they're able to joke with each other and give each other a hard time. I know we get that in my own family, so I can definitely relate to what Will's going through here. And then that afternoon, we see Will landing as Kitty's looking at her watch going, it's 4:30. I know I couldn't count on him. And he lands up, sorry I'm late. She's like, oh, there you are. I thought maybe you weren't going to come. Again, continuing the joke, he's like, I've got a reputation for being late, but I'm here and ready for takeoff. And she's like, so how are we going to do this? And I like this here at the bottom of page 10, this guard's looking out at Will, Starman, who just landed in front of Kitty. And Kitty and Will are standing like real close to each other. It's like facing one another. Will's standing over, because Will's taller, so he's standing over a little bit. And she's like, how are we going to do this? And Will's like this. And he picks her up and just takes off. And she's like, oh. And like, if you fall, I should be able to catch you. She's like, thanks. And again, Will says, you've seen me you've tested my powers, you've cleaned my costume, see my boxer short. I think you start calling my name. It's Will. And she's like, Will what? Maybe our second date. So I think that he's opening up to her a little bit. He's telling her at least his first name. Not enough to identify who he is, but I do like that they're bonding here. And I do like these panels here on this page. What is it? Page 11. And again, this book is numbered. I love when they number these pages. It makes it easier for us podcasters when we're talking about what we're talking about. But here on the top of page 11, where he's flying off with her and she's like real close to him, or when he's telling her, if you should fall, I should be able to catch you. She's like, thanks. I do like that look that she's giving him. You can see there's a bit of a spark here between the two. So, and I do like this. And again, Kitty, I was saying earlier, she's a bit of an older woman for Will, I think. But don't get me wrong, Kitty is drawn very beautiful. She's always been a beautiful woman. But moving on from there, we go out to looks like a abandoned building. And as they come to it, Will's like, that old dump is a laboratory? And she's like, a secret laboratory. Of course, what else could it be? And as they land, this robot that looks like something from the TV show Lost in Space comes out. Intruder alert, intruder alert. And Will's like, Kitty, get behind me. And he's about ready to blast this robot. And about this time, the professor comes walking out. Like, quiet, Kenneth. They're friends. Intruder alert, intruder acknowledged. So again, I like this robot and this guy, this Professor Harrison, who's got this robot set up to help kind of defend him when he's out here by himself. And Kitty makes the necessary introductions. And Kitty tells us and Will that Harrison is an alchemist. And he's an alchemist, you mean, yep, lead into gold. And he clarifies, like more like iron into gold. And again, he explains that there's iron pyrite in the area, and he's working on some way to turn it to gold. And then they're introduced to Kenneth, the Wonder Robot. And he's like, pleased to meet you. The robot's like, likewise, I'm sure. Starman, his friend, coded and filed. And apparently we find out that Kenneth was a retirement gift from Star Labs. And I guess Kitty was at the party. Because it was some party, wasn't it, Kitty? And she's like, 3 years ago, and I can still remember you juggling those beakers of vodka, Harrison. Those were the days. It's iced tea for me now. Come inside. And so they go inside. And again, just great artwork on these pages. I love Kenneth the robots. The professor looks a little shaky, but again, he's an older guy. And as an older guy myself, we're all a little shaky and a little suspicious. So we'll see what happens. So inside the lab, the Professor Harrison talks about how he's been working on a way to excite electrons at the nuclear orbit level and make them jump. And he says, it's got worthless pyrite, but by the time he's done, it could be the real thing. So again, they go into the lab area and we see the instrument from the front of the book here on this page where he's got a place for his arms to go strapped into. And so Will gets up, get into it. And Will's like, so where's the steaming cauldron of magic wands? And the professor's like, what? You're standing next to them. And as they're tying him up or shackling him to it, he's like, I'm not crazy about this. And Kitty's like, don't be a baby. You won't be tied up long. And apparently the shackles are shackling me into this contraption. It's going to help him focus the energy and boost the power to what he needs. And so they get an experiment here on page 15. Kitty says that it's working. We see the beam hitting this pyrite. And we can see here this middle of the page on the end panel, we see the the pyrite's slowly turning into gold. We see it going from a metal, a silver color, metal looking color to gold, to yellow. And as they're, he said, we need more power, keep powering it on, we're doing it. Ken is trying to let him know, Dr. Hayford, there's an intruder alert. There's an intruder alert. Oh, not there. You're saying intruder alert. As Phantom Girl comes flying through the wall. And again, we see the pieces of the broken wood come flying down. We got, in the background, we got Will. Again, a very nice panel here, about page 15, a nice panel showing Kitty and Dr. Hayford on the control panel, Will strapped to that machine, and Phantom Girl come flying in front of him. Again, a very beautiful woman. And then here on top of page 16, Phantom Girl's laying there, kind of her butt's up in the air, pointed towards us. A very 90s pose, I guess. And we get a quick introduction. She tells you, I might call me Phantom Lady, just in case you don't know who this is. And again, she comes from, I believe, Charlton, if I'm not mistaken, one of DC's acquisitions, and she showed up here and there throughout the DC universe. So this is just her latest appearance. And I was just double checking real quick. And Phantom Lady, she originally came from another line, Quality Comics, which was bought by Charlton, which was then bought by DC. And she was part of the Freedom Fighters with Uncle Sam. So I believe that at one point after DC acquired her, she was on Earth X with Uncle Sam and the Human Bomb and all those other characters fighting World War II against where the Nazis won. So it's a great character. I remember reading her here and there. I would see her show up, and I was familiar with her. I'm looking at, on Wikipedia just to refresh my memory on her. And yeah, I remember her from the Freedom Fighters, which was on Earth X. So a good character. Again, she was very much of a pinup girl, if you will. And so this pose here on the top of page 16, where she's sitting there and her butt up in the air and she's laying there. This is kind of, to me, it's very reminiscent of the kind of poses they would do with her to show off her physique. So, but again, moving off this story, because this isn't a Phantom Lady story, but she's in it, so I guess it is this month. We cut over and show this robot guy come walking. It looks like a robot, but it looks like he has a face almost, at least the lower part, his jaw. I'm not quite sure if that's the robot portion or if that's a computer simulation or if he's like a cyborg. But this robot is apparently here for may possibly Starman. He's talking about the power source, and that's basically what Will is at this point. It's a huge power source. But right now, Will's chained to this table, if you will, so he can't really do much. But he's like, yeah, if I was out of these shackles, we'll see who's neutralized. And Kenneth tries to fight the robot that came in, but unfortunately, the robot fires a missile at Kenneth, blasting his glass dome, which is his head, which gives Phantom Lady time to get up, and she does a kick at him. But the robot smashes her. Get a nice little action sequence as she rolls around. And she gets hit by the robot, but she rolls back and gets onto her feet and does kind of a, you're on page 8, bottom of page 18. Looking at this, at the time I enjoyed it. Well, I still enjoy it, but after the Black Widow movie and with her sister, I forget her name now, but she was ragging on the Black Widow about the way she would land. She would do these poses. She's like, you poser. The way Phantom Lady's land is kind of reminds me very much of a pose Black Widow did in several of the Marvel cinematic movies. So I can't look at this without thinking of Black Widow now. And we find out here that this creature or this robot's called Colonel Computron, and it works for a criminal group called Les Mille X. I'm probably butchering that because that's what I do. And I was looking up real quick, and apparently this Colonel Computron, apparently he showed up in issues of The Flash, the original Barry Allen Flash, showed up in issues 304, 310, and then he was in the second series, which was the Wally West Flash, a couple of times, and he showed up here and there. So doesn't have a lot of appearances, but he's got a few appearances here and there. But yeah, apparently he was a Flash villain prior to this. Apparently his real name is Basil Nerblin. He was this is from dc.fandom.com. He was a disgruntled toy maker who sought revenge against his employer, but was stopped by. So just look at the page real quick. And yes, first appearance was Flash 304, and appearance of death, spoilers, was Checkmate Volume 2, number 11, April 2007, which I probably won't be covering over my Task Force X podcast, but we'll see what happens. But anyways, back to this story. We're not talking about Task Force X or Checkmate. We're talking about Starman. So anyways, as General or Colonel Computron, he grabs that whole device that Will's on, and as he does so, Kitty turns off her control unit, her harness, that's what she calls it. It allows her to turn into Rampage, which again, she's appeared in here, I believe, and she first showed up over in Superman. She turns into this giant Rampage, got the mohawk and all that. And I like this, as she's turning it off, Phantom Lady's like, we're going to need something tougher than me to take that thing down. And Kitty transforms into Rampage, and Phantom's Lady, wow, sister is powerful. And Kitty's like, now we'll see. That's telling it. So again, here on bottom of page 19, a very nice action pose of both Rampage and Phantom Lady. They're both turned kind of to the side. Their backs facing one another, getting ready to fight. Very nice pose, very nice scene. I could almost see this being a poster. That's how good of a scene it is, in my opinion. And as the robot Colonel Computron leaves with Will, Starman, it looks like he's got some sort of telekinetic hold or something. He's carrying it out. Rampage runs up and grabs him and gets electrocuted, which knocks her down. And again, I love the dialogue in here. She grabs onto him and he electrocutes her. And she's like, something's not right. Something's not right. And Will's like, yeah, even I felt that. And Phantom Lady's like, okay, it's time for you to eat lasers. And Will's yelling from the back, or Starman's yelling from the background, careful, lady, he's up to something. And as she blasts him, again, the whatever she's shooting at him bounces off the robot and bounces back and knocks Phantom Lady down, letting Colonel Computron get away. All of a sudden, a helicopter pops out, kind of go-go gadget helicopter pops out of his head and starts spinning, and he flies off with Will. And it says, next issue, Rampage and Phantom Lady to the rescue. So again, great story, great artwork. I love this. And in the next issue box, we're getting a message from the editor saying that this is Scott's last issue as inker on Starman. Scott was leaving to do some other great work on titles such as The Comets from the Impact line. So this will be Scott Hanna's last appearance on Starman for now, at least. So, but anyway, so this was the first of a two-part story. Great story. I loved it. I love seeing Phantom Lady. I always love seeing Rampage. Like I said, she first showed up over in the Superman under the John Byrne run. I loved her there, and I love her when she shows up in Starman. So great. So let me know what you guys think. Send me an email to starman@headspeaks.com. That's starman@headspeaks.com. Yeah, I did it with abbreviations and everything because we're just looking at just Starman. You can send me to Starman, and again, my Headcast network is still down, so I'm using my Headspeaks right now. So it's starman@headspeaks.com, and let me know what you think about this issue. So now we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to play some promos for some friends of the show, and we'll be right back with Copper Comics Comic Rack.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
The Starman Manhunter Adventure Hour will be back after these messages.
Siskoid watches a lot of movies, like a lot. So now he has his own movie podcast, or several. Siskoid Cinema is your one-stop umbrella for a variety of shows like Fade In, exploring the first films of famous actors and directors.
This is a joke, right?
On Borrowed Time, discussing all your favorite time travel movies.
Whoa, this is heavy.
Why are things so heavy in the future? Is there a problem with the Earth's gravitational pull?
And No Escape from Kurt Russell, a dissection of the man, the mystique, and the movies.
There goes a perfectly good bumper sticker.
And more. Siskoid Cinema, a proud member of the Fire and Water Podcast Network.
Yo, Joe!
He'll fight for freedom wherever there's trouble. G.I. Joe is there. G.I. Joe, American hero. G.I. Joe is there. It's G.I. Joe against Cobra and Destro, fighting to save the day. He never gives up. He's always there, fighting for freedom over land and air. G.I. Joe, American hero. G.I. Joe is there.
Attention, Joes. This is General Hawk. I have an important mission for you. I need you to listen to G.I. Joe, a Real American Headcast. It's a monthly podcast where Aaron Moss, codename Head, and two other Joes, Ryan Daly and Kyle Benning, will be reporting on the comic book G.I. Joe, a Real American Hero. Previously published by Marvel, currently being published by IDW Comics. They'll also cover the special missions, the yearbooks, order battles, etc. To hear their message, report to gijoe.headspeaks.com or iTunes or Stitcher Radio. You can get further information at Facebook, Google+, and Twitter, all under G.I. Joe, a Real American Headcast. Dismissed.
Now we know!
And knowing is half the battle.
G.I. Joe!
G.I. Joe, a Real American Headcast, is a proud member of the Headcast family.
He never gives up. He'll stay till the fight's won. G.I. Joe will dare. G.I. Joe, American hero. G.I. Joe.
Beginning in 2018, the Who's Who podcast enters the 1990s with our coverage of the loose leaf editions.
Featuring Superman by Jerry Ordway.
The Joker by Brian Bolland.
Wonder Woman by George Perez.
Sandman by Mike Dringenberg.
Batman by Norm Brayfogle.
The JLI by Adam Hughes.
Eclipso by Bart Sears.
The Legion of Superheroes by Keith Giffen.
Dark Stars by Travis Charest.
Lobo by Simon Bisley.
Kent Shakespeare by Chris Sprouse? Who is that?
Doomsday by Tom Grummett.
Wait, are we covering these by issue or in alphabetical order?
The Justice Society of America by Mike Parobeck.
The Forever People again? You are f***ing kidding me.
Doom Patrol by Richard Case.
I'm so confused.
And many more. The Who's Who podcast, going boldly into the 90s.
A proud member of the Fire and Water Podcast Network, I guess.
Welcome back. Check out some of those other great shows I played there. And now it's time to move on to Copper Comics Comic Rack. So if this is the first time listening to the show, Copper Comics Comic Rack, this is a segment of the show. Well, first of all, the name came from the comic shop I used to go to all the time when I got into comics. It was called Copper Comics. The owner, Bob, not Bobby, Bob was the one of the other owners previously before they changed hands. Lonnie was a cop previously, and he retired, and him and some friends opened up a comic and card shop called Bobby's Comics, I believe it was called. And eventually the three of them split, went their own ways, did their own things. Bobby went into mainly just cards. Lonnie went into comics, and he had cards and other things also. And then, I forget the other guy's name now, but he had his own shop elsewhere. So, but I went to Lonnie's shop, Coppa Comics. Lonnie and Ann, great couple. I love them. They both passed away by now, but yeah, they were a great couple, and I love going to their shop. They were like my extended family. Anyway, so Coppa Comic Rack is the books that came out during the same month that this book was on sale. So we're going to go and take a look. And these aren't everything. These are the books that either I liked, I bought, or got some sort of special mention to me. So we're going to start out, and the very first issue I'm going to mention is The Nam. If it was a Marvel book, if I'm not mistaken, Larry Hama from G.I. Joe started this, but at this point, Chuck Dixon was writing it. For more on all things Chuck Dixon, check out the Signal podcast by friend of the show, David Finn. Also this month was Adventures of Superman 480. This was the part of the Kryptonian Man Return, being written by Jerry Ordway, and pencils. This issue had like a half a dozen pencils working on it, and inkers. Had a bunch of pencils and inkers working. But this was a good storyline. I love this run, the Triangle Era of Superman. Loved it. It was a fantastic era. For more on the Triangle Era of Superman, check out From Crisis to Crisis, a Superman podcast by friends of the show, Mike Bailey and Jeffrey Taylor. Also this month was Alf number 43. I wasn't picking this up, but I was a big fan of the TV show Alf. I had an Alf doll when I was younger. I say younger, I was a teenager, but again, I had stuffed animals. Leave me alone. Being picked on. Oh, sorry. Anyways. Also was Alienation, the First Comers, number 1. And also Alienation Skin Trade, number 3. I didn't pick up these books, but I did watch the movie and I watched the TV series. I enjoyed it. I picked up, I think, some issues of the earlier issues of Alienation, but I wasn't into it at this point. Again, this, like I said before, the late 80s and 90s, almost everything had a comic book and a spin-off and sequel titles, and it was a crazy time to be alive. Also this month was Alpha Flight 98 and also Alpha Flight Special, number 1. I believe these, as I said, were Billy books. Again, for those just joining us, a Billy book is a friend of mine, Billy Tevnan. Me and him both bought comic books back at the time, and I would buy some, he would buy some, we'd trade back and forth. There would be some overlap that we'd buy, but he would get some that I wouldn't pick up just due to money, and I would get some he wouldn't get, so we'd trade back and forth to read. And so this is one of the ones I read from Billy, I believe. Also this month, we had Amazing Spider-Man, number 349. Amazing Spider-Man. This was being written by David Michelini and penciled by Eric Larson before he jumped off and helped form Image. Again, this is a great era of Spider-Man. I loved Spider-Man at this point. Was buying all the Spider-Man books. Also this month was Animal Man number 37. This was post Alan Moore. I think it was Alan Moore that was writing originally. Tom Veitch was on at this point, and they were starting to lean more into the Vertigo, the weirder stuff. I was still buying it this time, but I wasn't as in love with the first 2 years of the book, which I may be covering at some point on one of my shows somewhere or on its own show. Haven't decided yet, but Animal Man is one of those I want to cover at least the first couple of years of. Also this month was Archie 300. Again, I'm just mentioning because it's Archie, and Archie's been around forever. I remember reading those as a young kid. I would stay, sometimes a friend of the family, Lila, would watch me and my brother, and she would have a bunch of comics, and Archie was some of the ones she had. So there was a bunch of Archie books out. There was Archie 300, Archie Digest Magazine, Archie Giant Series Magazine, Archie Riverdale High. And so, oh Lord, there's like half a dozen Archie books right here. And that's not even getting into like Betty and Me. And there's 3 Betty and Veronica, Betty books. There's other books. So Archie had a lot of comics out this time. Also this month was Avengers 334 and also Avengers West Coast number 72. Again, I was buying these at the time. Avengers West Coast started off as a Billy book, but I started picking it up on my own because I enjoyed it so much. Again, I didn't buy this next one, but I'm going to mention it just because she's got a big movie out, or it was out here recently. Barbie, number 7, and also Barbie's Fashion, number 7, were both out this month. Again, I wasn't into the Barbie books, but since Barbie has a movie that just came out, and actually I guess it's on streaming now, but I figured I'd mention that one. Batman 464. Again, this was a great era. This was Alan Grant and Norm Brayfogle. I know there's a couple different podcasts out there covering Batman, especially this era. I know Michael Bailey's got one, I believe. I know Ryan Daly was doing, I forget what it was called. He was doing one looking at this era of Batman. So there's a couple of great Batman podcasts out there. Also for Batman, there was Batman Archives Volume 2 hardcover. This was reprinting the older Bob Kane Batman books. This was the second volume of those. And also was Batman Full Circle number 1. This was the Return of the Reaper from the Batman Year 2, which was over Detective Comics half a dozen years before this. It's kind of a sequel to that. As I mentioned, there was 4 Betty books. Then we move on to Captain America 387. Again, another great era for Captain America. This was being written by the fabulous Mark Grunwald. I love this era of Captain America. Fantastic stories. Moving on from Captain America, there was also issue 388 was out this month. So it was 2 issues. It was going bi-weekly for the summer, I believe. Moving on from Captain America, I'm going to mention just briefly Casper Digest Magazine, number 1. Again, Casper was some of those books that Lila had at her house I would read. Also moving on from there, Cerebus had some books. Here we go, Challengers of the Unknown, number 5. I was picking this one up. This was a mini-series. I want to say it was a 12-issue mini-series, if I'm not mistaken. Written by Jeff Loeb. Artist was Tim Sell. Challengers of the Unknown is one of those. It's a good book, but it never lasts long. It always seems to have a problem getting its footing. So I enjoyed this, but yeah, it was a little weird. Also from Innovation, there was Child's Play, the series number 3. Again, yeah, Chucky had his own book, of course. Moving on from Chucky, I'm going to mention Clive Barker's Nightbreed. I picked up some of these books. I watched the movie. There was also a role-playing game loosely based on that I played. There were some Conan books. I'm not going to just mention briefly. Damage Control number 2. This was Damage Control. You may know them from the recent Spider-Man movies. They, in Marvel terms, they were a company that would clean up after superheroes got done fighting. It was more of a comedy book, and they would come in, they would clean up after the heroes. Also this month was Daredevil 294. Again, I was buying Daredevil. I was enjoying it. It was hit or miss. I mean, there would be some good issues, some issues not as good. Overall, I enjoyed it. I think I was buying Daredevil at this point. So it was that good. I was buying it. Also, Darkhawk number 5. I enjoyed Darkhawk. A young boy finds an amulet that turns him into a superhero. Good series. I like that series. Also this month was Deadly Foes of Spider-Man number 3. This was I think it was 4-issue miniseries that covered, Rhino and Shocker and Boomerang and Hydra and several other Spider-Man villains. Deathlock number 1. I had this one. If I remember, I was a futuristic tale of a guy that was badly damaged and he's part cyborg at this point. I don't remember much about it now, but I remember enjoying it when I read it. So I'm going to throw that out there. Again, just throw it out there just because I'm Brotherhead. My nickname used to be Big Perv. There was Debbie Does Dallas number 3 from Malibu Comics, their Aracel imprint. So yes, even porn had comic book tie-ins. Welcome to the 90s, kids. Also this month we had the Demon number 13. It was just called Demon 13. This is being written by Alan Grant. I was reading this series. This issue, he was fighting against Lobo. Also this month, going back to Batman, we had Detective Comics 631 and 632. Again, this was being written by Peter Milligan. Art was by Jim Aparo. This was the Golem of Gotham Part 1 and Part 2. Again, I was enjoying Detective Comics. Sometimes the art wasn't as great in my opinion. I don't like some of the darker art styles, but overall it was an enjoyable book. It wasn't bad enough that I stopped buying it, if that counts for anything. Also was Doctor Strange, Sorcerer Supreme, number 31. This month was Infinity Gauntlet crossover, and the Silver Surfer showed up in it. I was buying this one, of course. I'm going to mention I wasn't buying this, but there was Doctor Who magazine. I wasn't big Whovian at that point, but that was out. Doom Patrol 45. This was Grant Morrison's run. This was when it was going Vertigo or pre-Vertigo. This was, again, Grant Morrison was going the weirder, more oddball stories. I was enjoying this. I didn't like some of the later stuff that was done by people imitating Morrison when the other writers took over, but I enjoyed what Morrison did on it. And again, for more on Doom Patrol, I know there is the Waiting for Doom podcast done by some Australian friends down there. And also there was over on Max, the Doom Patrol TV series, which I believe recently ended. Also this month, I'm going to mention it. There was Double Dragon number 1 based off the video game. I used to love the video game. I don't know if I picked up this Double Dragon. I don't remember. It was by Marvel Comics. I want to say I probably did because, again, I was addicted to buying almost everything out there, but I don't remember this one offhand. Moving on from there, just a brief mention, Dragonlance 32. I didn't buy that, but it's D&D. Excalibur 39. This was another Billy book. This looks like it was part of the Cross Time Cape or whatever it was. Let me see. Yeah. This was a Billy book, I believe, still. I think I started buying it possibly. Me and Billy at some point started drifting away, and so I started buying some of the books I wanted to read that he was buying. There was also Excalibur, The Possession, #1. This was a special. Again, I'm sure I read this one, but I don't remember offhand. Fantastic Four 354. This is being written and artist by Walter Simonson. Great era. I love the Fantastic Four. This was part of the Cross Time Express, or at least the story was called that. I love the Fantastic Four. I was buying it at this point. Great stories. Moving on from there, we have The Flash, number 52. Again, this was the Wally West Flash. This was still being written by William Messner Loebs. This was when Wally was working for the IRS. He was helping them collect from supervillains. And now being an IRS employee myself, I kind of appreciate these stories a little bit more. Moving on from there was G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, number 14. This is where they introduced Metalhead. I know I was reading these, but I don't remember Metalhead offhand. So I know that when the figure came out for the Classified, he's not one that I gravitated towards because I don't remember him. I got out of the toys by this point, so I was just reading the book. Speaking of G.I. Joe, check out G.I. Joe, A Real American Headcast, monthly on the Headcast Network. But yes, this was written. Most of the series was written by Larry Hama. Overall, great series. It's starting to get up to the area where I started to drift off from it. I wasn't liking it as much, but it's G.I. Joe. Ghost Rider 15. I have this one. I'm not sure if I still do or not. This one here was I think this was a special cover. It's got Ghost Rider's head. The head's like flaming white. And I believe that was a glow-in-the-dark cover, if I'm not mistaken. Also this month, Green Arrow number 49 from Mike Grell. Green Arrow, good story. I was buying at the time. This was the grim and darker, grittier, more realistic Green Arrow. He was using real arrows instead of trick arrows. Good series. Again, for more on Green Arrow, check out Warlord Worlds by friends of the show, Darren and Ruth Sutherland. One of the greatest podcasting couples I know. Got a great show, and they're big fans of Mike Grell. So check that out. Green Lantern number 14. This is part of the Mosaic storyline, which drifted off eventually into Green Lantern Mosaic, which featured, the Green Lantern Mosaic featured John Stewart heavily. So this kind of leads into that eventually. Being written by Gerard Jones. Penciler was Mark D. Bright. Again, I was buying Green Lantern. Love the book. We'll talk about that in upcoming episodes maybe if I get there before this show ends. Also this month, Guardians of the Galaxy number 14. This was the futuristic Guardians of the Galaxy, not the current movies we have, which was good, but I wanted this version of the Guardians, but we didn't get it. And still speaking of the Guardians of the Galaxy Annual number 1. This was part of the Korvac Quest. This was when they grouped like 3 or 4 annuals together and had a little crossover going between them. This time, like I say, it was the Korvac Quest. So I'm sure it crossed over with the Avengers and probably some other Avengers titles, but I'm not quite sure offhand which ones. But good. Yeah, I enjoyed the Guardians of the Galaxy. I just said I enjoyed Korvac. I read the original Korvac saga later in trade paperback form because there wasn't any comics at the time, but I did pick up this, and again, I enjoyed it. Also this month, not one I picked up, but I'm going to mention because it's a TNA book, Hardball number 1 by Malibu, a.k.a. Aracel. Again, this was another TNA book that was out there. This was the 90s. It was very much, there was a lot of TNA and adult type comics out there. So this was another one. Moving on from there, Hawk and Dove number 25. Again, loved Hawk and Dove. This was with the female Dove, Dawn, D-A-W-N, Granger. I love this run of Hawk and Dove. This was just a few issues before it ends and before Armageddon 2001 craps all over it and destroys it. I'm sorry. Moving on. And again, at some point, I want to do something with Hawk and Dove. I'm just not quite sure what yet or where it's going to come. But at some point, I may do a Hawk and Dove looking at this series and the 5-issue mini before it. So we'll see what happens. Moving on from Hawk and Dove, there was Hawk World number 13. I've talked about this. It was a John Ostrander joint. Firehawk appeared in it because, again, as I've mentioned elsewhere and before, John crossed all of his books over, which I liked. Hellblazer number 43. This was actually a Scott book later on. My friend Scott Kessler, who was a big Hellblazer fan. I read a lot of his Hellblazer books later on. The Incredible Hulk 383. This was the Hulk versus the Abomination. This was a Peter David, and it looks like it was probably during the Professor run, which I really enjoyed. That's, I think, one of my favorite versions of the Hulk is when he had Banner's intelligence in the Hulk's body, and he stayed the Hulk all the time. Fantastic story. Loved it. Just throw out there, I think I did mention it last month. I'll mention it again. In Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis number 2, because it's Indiana Jones. The Infinity Gauntlet number 1 also came out this month. The Infinity Gauntlet was Thanos trying to kill off half the Marvel Universe to appease and to make Lady Death happy because he was in love with her. This is loosely what the Infinity War and whatever the Marvel movies were based on. The last 2 Avengers movies were based on this part of the storyline. Also, I'm just going to mention, I didn't have this one, but there's the Innovation Summer Fun Special. Again, another kind of TNA book. I think this was less tame. This didn't, I don't think it's had any nudity in it, but it was a lot of pinups and a lot of, scantily clad women. Iron Man 270. He's got Iron Man on the cover with the Mandarin. This is being written by John Byrne. I believe I was picking Iron Man up at this point. I was enjoying Iron Man. Again, Iron Man is one of those that's hit or miss. Sometimes it's good, sometimes not as good. But I was picking Iron Man up at this point. A couple of Jughead books, because again, Archie. This month we also saw Justice League number 52. Justice League America, let me try that again. Justice League America 52. Justice League America Annual 5. Let me see, I thought there was a Justice League Europe. Apparently not. In Justice League America, it was Guy Gardner versus Blue Beetle, the fight of the century. Again, the Keith Giffen, DeMatteis joint. Great series. Again, for more on Justice League, check out Shag's the JL Wahaha podcast. Great podcast, great guy. Also, like I said, there was the annual for Justice League America, which crossed over with Armageddon 2001. I'm sure Shag covered this over on his series. And again, I covered the Armageddon 2001 over on Head Speaks a while back. So overall, I enjoyed Armageddon 2001. I'm not going to go into detail here about it, but there was some mistakes made. Justice League Society of America, issue 4. This was an 8-issue miniseries, bringing the Justice Society of America back into current DC Comics. It wasn't a bad run. I enjoyed that book. Legion 91, number 29. Again, this is being run by Alan Grant. I enjoyed the Legion book. Again, it changed every year. It was Legion 90. It started out Legion 89 during the invasion, as I've talked about previously. And every year it changed title. Great series of books. And I believe, who is it? I think it's Derek Crabb, I want to say, is covering this over on one of his podcasts, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry about that if I'm forgetting where it's at. Laugh 29, which was an Archie book. Leather and Lace number 22, another TNA book. A gorgeous gal with white hair, big tatas barely covered with a gun in her belt. I didn't have that one, just wanted to mention it because it's TNA. Legend of the Shield number 1. This was an Impact comic title. This was some old, I think it was old Archie comics, if I'm not mistaken. They've kind of revamped for a modern audience. I enjoyed the Impact comics, the Legend of S.H.I.E.L.D., the Web, I believe it was. There was a handful of them. They all crossed over to the Crusaders. I enjoyed those books for what they were. Not bad. Legion of Superheroes number 20. Again, this was the 5 years in the future. Legion of Superheroes was always in the future, but this was 5 years further in the future. It was a grim, dark, gritty, very dark book. They didn't wear a lot of costumes and code names. They went by their own names, if I'm not mistaken, and used civilian clothes. It was a good run. It was interesting. I enjoyed it. Moving on from there, we'll move on to, I'll mention briefly, Lost in Space number 1 by Innovation Comics. Innovation did a lot of the movie or TV adaptations or sequels or series, whatever you want to call it. Mark Spector, Moon Knight number 28. Again, I was buying this one. I enjoyed Mark Spector. This was Scarlet Redemption Part 3. Again, Mark Spector, Moon Knight recently had somewhat recently had a Disney Plus TV series. Moving on, Marvel Comics presents 80 and 81. This was part of the Weapon X storyline. This was a bi-weekly comic that had it was an anthology book that had several stories in it. And during this year of the run, it was focused on Weapon X, Wolverine's origins. So great. I was picking these up. Enjoyed that. Marvel Superheroes Summer Special X-Men. Again, these were all X-Men one-shots, basically stories. There was X-Men, Power Pack, Cloak and Dagger, Speedball. Yeah, I love some Speedball. I had this one. In fact, I still may have this one. Marvel Tales, featuring Spider-Man number 251. This was, again, a Spider-Man reprint book. It was reprinting old Spider-Man stories. This one looks like it was reprinted from Amazing Spider-Man 100, written by Stan Lee. Penciler was Gil Kane. I wasn't getting these, but a friend of mine, Peter Pastor, was getting these. So I read some of these books from him. Also this month was Mighty Mouse number 10. I didn't have that, but it's Mighty Mouse. I'll throw that out there. But there was the Mighty Thor 434. Again, I was buying Thor at this time. Again, Thor's another one of those that are hit or miss. Sometimes I'll like it, sometimes not as good. I'll pick up for a while, then I'll stop it. I'm sure I was picking up at this point. $1 Million Digest number 22. It was a Richie Rich book. Again, Richie Rich is one of those Lila books. I read a bunch of Richie Rich over at Lila's house when she would babysit me and my brother when I was younger. Mr. E, number 1 from DC. I may have picked this one up. I'm not quite sure. Namor the Submariner, number 15. It looks like Namor is fighting Danny Rand, aka Iron Fist. He's on the cover. Again, this was a John Byrne book. I was picking this one up. I was enjoying it. New Mutants Annual number 7. Again, this was Kings of Pain was this crossover. Again, this crossover in the X-Men books. I was picking this one up, I'm sure. New Titans number 77, part of the Wildebeest Hunt. Again, I enjoyed the Wildebeest Hunt, even though I didn't enjoy the ending of it. And again, I may cover the Titans at some point in the future somewhere if I live long enough. New Warriors number 13. I enjoyed the New Warriors. That was great. It was a bunch of younger heroes. Speedball was on this. I think Speedball was on. I enjoyed this book. It was a good run. I enjoyed New Warriors. Again, for more on New Warriors, I know that Jared and I believe it's the Dark Web over on the Long Box Crusade Network, they do a come out and play podcast and a live stream on the New Warriors. So check out Jared and delve in the dark web over on the Long Box Crusade. Also this month was New Warriors Annual number 1. This was part of the Kings of Pain crossover that crossed over with a book I just mentioned, New Mutants. So it's New Mutants that crossed over with the New Warriors. We'll see as we go along. Maybe it was a new thing. I don't know. But yeah, it was part of that crossover. Also was Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. number 25. This month, we also saw the official handbook of the Marvel Universe, Master Edition number 8. This was kind of like Marvel's version of the Who's Who. I think I picked up some of these. I don't remember. I want to say I picked up some of these because, again, I was buying almost everything Marvel and DC because I had an addiction. Then also this month was the original Ghost Rider Rides Again. It was a 7-issue miniseries. And I want to say it was a reprint. Yeah, this was reprinting old Ghost Rider stories. I picked up this storyline, or this series. In fact, I may still have this first issue. Also this month, I'm going to mention just briefly Planet of the Apes number 12, and also Planet of the Apes Urbex Folly number 4, because again, everything was out there. Also this month, along the same lines, Predator 2 number 2, and Predator Big Game number 3, just because, comics and movies/TV tie-ins. Punisher number 50. Again, I was buying Punisher. Again, I was buying all things Punisher at this point. I was going through what Shag may call my Punisher phase. There was also Punisher War Journal number 32, Punisher POV number 1. I bought all 3 of those. I don't think I bought these, but Puppet Master number 4. Again, Puppet Master was a low-budget horror series. I've watched some of the movies. Interesting. Quasar number 24. I enjoyed Quasar. I love this series. Great job. Mark Grunwald did a fantastic job. And I think they've stopped it by now. But I know that friend of the show, Mean Gene Hendricks, and Joe Fishman was doing a Quasar podcast. But I think they've stopped doing it just for reasons. But it was called I think it was Quantum Cast, if I'm not mistaken. Also this month, Richie Rich number 4, get another Richie Rich book. RoboCop 17, just to throw that out there. Also this month, we had Sensational She-Hulk number 29. This was written by this time by Louise Simonson. Spider-Man crossed over. Again, I was enjoying She-Hulk. Loved that title. It was more tongue-in-cheek, more comic, kind of like the She-Hulk TV series that Disney Plus recently did. Gru the Wanderer number 79. That one just seems to be around forever. Sergeant Rock 14. Just throw that out there because it's Sergeant Rock. Shade the Changing Man number 13. I was still buying this. This was being written by Peter Milligan. This was kind of on the edge of the Vertigo, pre-Vertigo series. I enjoyed it, but it was getting a little weird for me. So I don't remember how much longer I picked this one up. Shade previously to this, I think it was a different version of Shade, supposed to be a different character, was over in the Suicide Squad, which I covered here quite a while back on my Task Force X podcast. Also this month was Silver Surfer 51 and the Silver Surfer Annual number 4. This Silver Surfer Annual was part of the Corvette quest that I mentioned earlier with the Guardians of the Galaxy. So, in fact, on the cover it says, in battle with the Guardians of the Galaxy. So again, I know I picked this one up because I was picking up all the crossovers. Also a Silver Surfer Parable, a trade paperback. Cover looks familiar. I may have gotten this one. I'm not sure. It looks like this was a reprint. One of the stories that reprinted was Silver Surfer number 1 and Silver Surfer number 2 from 1989. So this was a trade paperback of something relatively recent. Sleepwalker number 2. This had a character called Q-Ball, looks like. I think 8-Ball. 8-Ball was the villain in this issue. Sleepwalker was a good, it was a weird, but I enjoyed it. It was a Marvel series. It was in the regular Marvel universe. I enjoyed that series for what it was. Spectacular Spider-Man 178. Again, this was being written by J.M. DeMatteis. Great run. This had Vermin in it, one of Spider-Man's foes. I enjoyed Spectacular. I enjoyed all things Spider-Man this time. Just for the name alone, I'm going to mention Spicy Adult Stories, number 3. Again, it was from Malibu Comics / Aracel. I didn't get I don't remember seeing this one offhand, but I may have picked it up if I would have seen it possibly, because again, I'm big perv and I had an addiction with comics, so you never know. Moving on from there, also this month was Spider-Man number 12. This was the Todd McFarlane book that they gave him to make him happy, but it didn't work. He eventually left and went form Image. This had Wolverine in it. Again, Todd gets a lot of crap because he has a very distinctive style, but I enjoyed the Spider-Man book for the most part, so I can't complain. Spider-Man Battles the Myth Monster number 1. I do not remember this one. To tell you the truth, I do not remember this one at all. Yeah, I couldn't tell you anything about this book. Don't remember it. Star Trek number 21, Star Trek Annual number 2, Star Trek The Model Imperative, Star Trek Next Generation 21. A whole string of Star Trek books. Also this month, as you just heard me talk about, Starman number 36. You can check that out on the Starman Podcast Hour. Or the Starman Adventure Hour, that's what it is. Changed the name so many times, I forget where I'm at. Superboy number 18. This was the Adventures of Superboy based on the TV series. Written by a good friend of the show and Facebook friend of mine, Paul Kupperberg. Great guy, great writer. Definitely recommend anything by Paul Kupperberg. Superman number 57. This was part of the Return of the Krypton Man storyline. This was being written and penciled by Dan Jurgens. Love Dan, love Superman. Can't recommend it enough. Also with Superman, the Man of Steel number 1. Superman's newest book. I had this, and I still have this one. Again, as I said previously, for all things Superman in this era, check out From Crisis to Crisis, a Superman podcast. It was a great podcast covering a great era of books. Swamp Thing 109. This was a quest for the Elementals, part 6 it looks like. Again, I was buying Swamp Thing at the time. Also this month was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Adventures number 23. This was the Turtles based on the cartoon, not the original Mirage Turtles. This was the lighter kids version of it. Again, just to give a shout out to his name, Toxic Avenger number 4, because it's Toxic Avenger. Transformers number 80. This was at the end, if not the end. In fact, yeah, this was the last issue of the Transformers title. In fact, I like it. Originally, it started off as a 4-issue miniseries, and it was picked up, and instead of starting new, the first issue of the regular series was number 5. They just kept going with the series. So this one says number 80 in a 4-issue limited series. So I like the way they did that it was a 4-issue series. It was picked up the full series. And so they ended there. Number 80 in a 4-issue limit. What? The epic conclusion. So yeah, it's Transformers. You can't go wrong with that. Transformers. And I know some friends, I think they're over, where are they? Jonathan is, if I'm not mistaken, covering the Transformers over on his podcast. There was also Transformers number 314, which was a Marvel UK book. Didn't see that one here, so I didn't get that one. See, I'm not sure why, unless it was weekly or something. I'm not sure why it's up to 314 when Transformers number 1 started it. I have to look into that. Also Transformers 315, the Marvel UK book. But anyways, I think it's over on the Married with Comics podcast, or they may have renamed themselves but the Married of Comics podcast, great podcast. I think they're doing Transformers, if I'm not mistaken. Uncanny X-Men 278. Again, the Uncanny X-Men, this had Strong Guy versus, it looks like Rogue in it. This started off as a Billy book, but I ended up buying the X-Men on my own. Moving on from there, there was a Veronica and Rome book, just to throw out another Archie title. Web of Spider-Man number 78. Had Cloak and Dagger in this issue. Again, Web of Spider-Man, I was buying it. It was a Spider-Man book, so I bought it. What If number 27. This issue was What If the Submariner had joined the Fantastic Four. This was a second volume of What If. I bought it, loved it, enjoyed it. Bought it, read it, and loved it. There you go. What the number 13. Again, this was kind of the humorous look at Marvel Comics. Who's Who in the DC Universe number 11. This was the loose leaf binder. This one was featuring or starring Guy Gardner. Again, this was just basically the newest version of the Who's Who for DC. For more on Who's Who, check out the Who's Who in DCU podcast by friends of the show, the Irredeemable Shag, and of course his life mate Rob Kelly. Also this month we had Wolverine number 41 and 42, and both of those had second printings. This had Cable and Sabretooth in it. I was buying it. This was being written by, again, Larry Hama of G.I. Joe fame. Wonder Woman number 58. Again, a Billy book that eventually I started buying. X Factor number 58. This was still when it was the original X-Men in their own, formed a new team. X-Men Classic number 61, which reprinted old X-Men titles. This one reprinted X-Men 157, or Uncanny X-Men 157. And X-Men Days of Future Past trade paperback. Again, this collected that whole Days of Future Past. Actually, this collected the annuals. When they had this year's annuals was Days of Future Present. Sorry, Future Past was the original storyline. This crossover was called Days of Future Present, and a crossover between Fantastic Four, New Mutants, X Factor, and X-Men during their annuals. So again, good times. And finally, just to throw out there, Zorro number 8. Again, I didn't buy the book. I think I maybe got the first issue, but I wasn't buying this book. But again, I did watch Zorro on Disney when I was growing up. So very nice. I enjoyed it. It was fun. But that's the titles that came out this month, May of 1991. If you guys know anything from that month that came out I didn't mention, let me know. Any titles in here I mentioned you read, you enjoyed, definitely let me know about that. But again, that's going to do it for this episode of the Starman Adventure Show. As I think I said previously, we're coming up to the end of Starman. Again, this series only ran 45 issues, I'm going to say. I'm just double checking real quick. Yeah, 45 issues. And then he appeared a couple other places where he, in quotes, died, which I may cover. So we're coming up near the end of this one. We've got like a year left or so. So sadly, we're running out of Starman to talk about. But let me know what you think. Email me to starman@headspeaks.com. Let me know what you think. Did you enjoy this episode? What about the Comics Comic Rack? Which books did you have or did you like? Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Again, you can definitely check us out over on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Headcast Network. And when you join us over there, again, you can throw a few bucks in the tin and help us out. You enjoy great people over there, such as Gene Hendricks. As I mentioned earlier on my show, he's a podcaster. He's also a Patreon member. Thank you, Gene. And he's the only one paying right now, but I'm going to throw out some mentions to some other people on there. Another one for a big one for Mark Ross, a.k.a. Cluck Trent. He was for a while, but again, I think he kind of backed off when my shows went on hiatus for a while. He thought maybe I died, so he quit. But I appreciate you, Mark. I'm sorry again for the delays. Would love to have you back as a regular member, but hey, I appreciate what you've done so far. Also, just going to throw out there's Brian Weebler, Heinz Z, which is over my G.I. Joe podcast. He joins in a lot on my live feeds, and D1 are all free members of the Patreon. So again, if you're interested in joining, go ahead and go to patreon.com. Try that again. Patreon.com/Headcast Network. And go ahead and join us over there and throw a few bucks in the tin. But that's going to do it for this month. Next month, we'll be looking at Starman number 37, the second part of this crossover with Phantom Lady and Rampage, saving Will Payton's behind. Join us in 30 days. Until then, remember, Star Hunters, keep looking to the stars.
Thank you for listening to another great episode of the Starman Manhunter Adventure Hour. Please join us next month for another great, fantastic episode as we cover another issue of the Will Payton Starman series and the Mark Shaw Manhunter series. Keep in mind that these podcasts are not affiliated or endorsed by DC Comics. I'm just a fanboy who loves these comics and wants to spread these love with everyone else out there and just talk about them. Again, you can email us at smah@headspeaks.com, or you can go to our blog, which is at starman-manhunter.headspeaks.com. You can also go to the Facebook page at facebook.com/Starman Manhunter Adventure Hour. No spaces, all one word. But once again, thank you very much for joining us. Until next episode, this is Aaron Moss saying, see you in the funny pages.